and continue to move forward. We are at a point where opening our community to visitors is underway. That is why we're having this meeting, because this is a heavy tourist destination. We have already experienced the chaos of opening recreational opportunities. So how does this affect the businesses in residential areas? And what are the options and considerations? How will this work with the locals? And what are the enforcement options? So before we start, the council wants to thank Leo, the Chief of Staff, Jason Wilson, the IT expert, for setting this unprecedented meeting format. Field Rep Elise Van Dyne and Council Clerk Nance Jones have contributed valuable support. So we'll get started. Do you want to do the call to order, Leo, or how do you want?
Why don't you go ahead and do the call to order, and then I can do the roll call either through the screen or I can go through our list.
Okay, how about if I have Nance do that since she's accustomed?
Sure, actually that would be great. If Nance is willing to do it, that would be perfect.
I'm unmuted. So the meeting is called to order officially. I would just go ahead and I'll do roll call. And as I call your name, rather than unmute yourself and make it complicated, just raise your hand, okay? How does that sound? Jeanette Dillman, Chair. Claudia Sissenfeld. Vesta Koopstakes. Lucy Hardcastle. Cynthia Strecker. Jordan Lebovich. Pip Marquez de la Plata. Ron Redmond filling in for Jennifer. And Mike Nichols. Roll is completed, Jeanette.
Thank you.
Sorry, before we move on, so I'm seeing that someone, I believe it's Cynthia, is raising her hand. And so let me see if we can connect her in. Actually, let me just allow her to talk and let's see what's happening here. So Cynthia, you're unmuted.
Okay, I just am unable to get into the meeting. I'm on the webinar, but
Can they hear you?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, then all is well, I guess.
And you're here. Good. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so just as it reminded me that for people who have called in, if you're only accessing via the telephone, you can press *9 on your phone to raise your hand. Like, I'm not sure if that's how Cynthia did it or if she's on a screen and just not broadcasting video, but I wanted to let you know that. So when it's the appropriate time for people who need to ask questions, for example, that would be the method to do it, *9.
So I think we need to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'd like to ask Mike Nichols to do that.
All right. Can someone unmute Mike? I'll do it. All right, Mike, you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next is approval of the agenda. And I do briefly want to talk to that this is a special meeting, and we're limited to talking about things that are on the agenda. So pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3a, public comment at special meetings is limited solely to items on the special meeting agenda. The chair will accept comments from the public after the agenda item is presented to the council. You may speak to each item one time, and the comments are limited to 3 minutes. So is there any comment or motion to approve the agenda?
I so move.
Best of seconds. Shall we raise hand? Oh, we have to, if you're having a teleconference, you have to do all of your votes, roll call votes. So do you want to do it, Leo, or do you want Nance to do that?
What if Nance would do it? That would be great.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna unmute you, Nance. All right, there you go.
Who actually seconded? Sorry, I missed it. I got Micah's first.
Besta seconded.
Besta, thank you. Okay. All in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Oh, roll call. Oh, that's right. I need a roll call. Okay. So Jeanette Dillman,
Aye.
Claudia Sissenfau. You can raise your hand if I is okay with you. Vesta Copestakes.
Aye.
Lucy Hardcastle. Cynthia Strecker.
Aye.
We see you now. Great. Jordan. Okay. Pip. Marquez. And Mike Nichols.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll move on then. Statement of conflict of interest. Are there any council members who have a conflict? Okay. Informational item. Linda had a major fire prep meeting yesterday, and either she or Elise are going to talk about that. Elise is going to talk about that important meeting. Go ahead.
Well, just a very quick summary. We brought in subject matter experts from CAL FIRE, from Sonoma Fire, the regional operations coordinator, the public health officer, and went over, as well as Sam Wallace from the EOC, to talk about evacuation plans. So I highly recommend that you go to Supervisor Hopkins' Facebook page. You'll find that video. If you look under videos, you'll find the fire town hall, and there's a lot of great information in there. We had an hour-long meeting covering a lot of topics around vegetation management, evacuation, alert systems, all these things that people need to know. A couple of the important things that I want to raise up is that CAL FIRE confirmed that we are going to have an early fire season. I personally was doing a lot of rain dances to bring the rain this week, but it did not succeed in pushing our fire season off. We still have had too little rain, and we're going to have an early fire season. So it is very important for all of us to prepare now. The nice thing is that the shelter in place order has been modified so that landscaping is now one of the essential services, or services that is allowed, businesses that are allowed to be operable. So right now is the time when fire preparation and especially vegetation management need to happen. Cara Leone of Permit Sonoma emphasized home hardening around the first 5 feet around your house. Not only getting vegetation down, but also looking at your personal items. Wooden chairs, that lovely sisal mat that you have as a doormat, all those things that could be flammable. That it's important when you leave your house to close your windows so that you don't leave a space for the fire to come in. Lots of great tips like this. So again, I really encourage you to go to Supervisor Hopkins' Facebook page and listen to that entire town hall and get to work on home hardening, vegetation management, and learning about your evacuation plans. Thank you. Oh, one last thing. The county is also working very, very hard on vegetation prep, and they will respond right now if you send in requests for vegetation management in your area. So the best way to do that is to go to SoCo Report It. You can just Google SoCo Report It, and it's super easy to just put in your information and say, we need vegetation management on this road, or you can send an email to, Transportation and Public Works, or even to me, and I'll forward it to Transportation and Public Works. So if you have an area near you where there's a county road that requires vegetation management, just let us know so that we can get that taken care of. This is the time to do this.
Thank you. Do we have any board comments regarding this matter? And if you do, please keep it to 3 minutes or less. Vesta? Can you unmute it, Leo?
Oops, sorry, there you go. One of the things that I asked the fire inspector, when they're going to start inspections on properties, and the fire inspectors are going to start on the 25th, I believe it is, of May, 25th or 27th of May. So if a lot of people think along the lines of fire inspectors are going to be coming by, they can think along the lines of having themselves prepared by then. It will impact things like insurances, things like that as well. So to know that the inspectors are coming by, I think it's an important motivation, that it's not just us being motivated for safety, and that it's our entire neighborhoods. One of the things that they talked about is that the entire neighborhoods get together and together clean up your neighborhoods to make sure the entire neighborhood is clean, because if one house is ready, it doesn't mean that the other ones aren't going to go up in flames and take yours out as well. So I felt that the inspection date was an important date for people to be aware of.
Thank you. Any other board comments? Any other board comments? Am I muted here?
So I see Lucy has comments, so I'll go ahead and unmute her right now. Just to try to avoid the conflicts, I'll try to do all the turning on and off, but if it's failing, then you can try.
Well, I didn't see it, so I just went ahead.
Great.
Very quickly, just to say that they did fire inspections in the Champs-Élysées neighborhood last year, and people I had been talking to about vegetation management for a long period of time actually did it. So it really worked very well in my neighborhood. So I'm a big proponent of that. So
Thank you. Any other board comments? Okay, any public comments?
So if you're a member of the public and you would like to speak, you can raise your hand, either selecting that on the Zoom screen, or if you're on the phone, you can press *9. We'll give you a moment to do that. Okay, it looks like there are not public comments on this item.
Okay, then we'll move on. We're getting down to the regular calendar items for this special meeting. And Supervisor Linda Hopkins is going to give an update on the issues affecting the community during the shelter in place. I have to say, it's a good thing I've been locked up at home, because I've attended a whole lot of meetings. And I really felt like I was deep into it and realized what it is that Linda Hopkins does for us from daylight till dark. And I really appreciate Linda. I know how hard you're working. So please tell us what you know about this.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Jeanette. I really appreciate it. I wanted to start by providing the latest and greatest news from the county, which is that effective tomorrow, we are continuing with our phased reopening, and we're actually coming into alignment with the new businesses that are allowed to reopen based on the governor's direction that was just recently given. So I want to read you a list of those businesses so that you're aware of what can come back online tomorrow. We do have childcare facilities for non-essential workforce. Up until this point, it has been for essential workers only, which has presented some challenges for childcare providers because they might not have enough kids to fill a classroom who are essential workers' children. And they were also a little bit concerned about, do I have to check the parents? How do I know if they're telling the truth? And so it created some anxiety in the childcare provider community. So that's a shift. We are also allowing residential and janitorial cleaning services, car washes, pet groomers, dog walking services, outdoor museums, open air galleries, botanical gardens, and outdoor exhibition spaces, as well as office workspaces, but only where teleworking is not possible. And if you go to the Sonoma EDB website, which is sonomaedb.org, that actually has the best management protocols and practices that are required for some of these businesses to reopen. So we're trying to make it very clear, that we're not allowing people to just go ahead and throw open their doors. It's very, very critical that they follow these BMPs. And we actually even have a self-certification process that they can undertake that will allow them to move forward with reopening safely. That's kind of the whole county picture, but I really want to talk a little bit in particular about the challenges that we face in the lower Russian River. I know that all of you know this well, but it was actually called out by Dr. Eiler, who presented an economic assessment and forecast to the Board of Supervisors, that the lower Russian River is one of those areas that is going to be among the hardest hit in the entire county. We are so dependent upon seasonal tourist revenue. That really is a huge driver of our local economy. And so unfortunately, that puts us especially at risk, because even if we are able to move forward with an attestation process that would allow us to have more local flexibility in terms of what businesses can reopen and when they can reopen under the guidance of our local public health officer, tourism and lodging is still off the table for now. So that doesn't come until phase 3 of the state. And if we're looking at just, the potential soft reopenings within phase 2, which we could potentially get, if we're able to sort of demonstrate to the state that we have sufficient testing protocols and, meet a number of metrics, that's still just talking about the opportunity to go into a store and buy something or to actually sit down in a restaurant. So it is not talking about lodging facilities for tourism at this point in time, which means that it's going to be a very, very challenging summer for the lower Russian River and for all of our amazing, wonderful small businesses. And I think that the challenge is really twofold, because on one hand, you have the sort of fear and anxiety and frustration by watching the local economy just sort of fizzle out, right? There's no ability to even reopen for some of these businesses, which is very, very challenging for the owners and for the employees. On the other hand, we actually can look back at history. And in 1918, the lower Russian River was actually one of the sort of epicenters for the flu pandemic back then, because people fled from the cities, from the urban areas into the lower Russian River. And so they very quickly, overwhelmed whatever limited healthcare capacity there was. And it was actually, really very dangerous for the lower Russian River community back then. And so, on one hand, there is the sort of economic concerns, but on the other, there are very real public health concerns that I have heard raised by a number of residents who, I was getting reports actually last Friday that it seemed that there were a lot of out of area tourists walking around downtown Guerneville not wearing facial coverings. So I did drive through a couple of times last weekend just to check things out. And it did seem like the folks that, every time I saw a face that was recognizable, even though it was under a facial covering, they were in fact following the proper protocol. And yet there were some folks that did not seem to be local who are unfortunately not wearing the facial coverings. And so I'm not going to, I try not to gloss over things. And I think this is going to be a very tough summer because you're caught between those public health concerns and the very real economic concerns. A couple of positive notes. We did move forward with dispersing our tourism impact funds, and a lot of that went to fantastic, programs, some of which actually were, in conversations with different MAC representatives and, had a hand in trying to support our local businesses and actually get food into, the bellies of residents who need it. So I know that, we have Friends of Rio Neto, and we funded River to Coast Children's Services, also providing some relief for some of the undocumented residents in the lower Russian River area. So there were a number of programs that hopefully should help try to, make ends meet. West County Community Services also received funds. So we've got the full list. I know that went out and you've probably all had a chance to review it. But if anyone has any questions about that or anything else that's going on in the county, I would be happy to answer broad questions. But since it's a little bit awkward to ask questions in the middle, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up my presentation with just a final few words on the summer dam installation, which I know is a top concern for a lot of lower Russian River businesses as well as locals alike. And we do have Herman J. Hernandez to present a few words after I finish talking, but I wanted to let you all know that I did host a meeting last week, And in attendance at that meeting, we had the Sonoma County Water Agency, which had run modeling on what the sort of river would look like with or without a dam at about 100 CFS. The unfortunate news from the water agency and from PG&E is that there are going to be actually 2 variances that will really dramatically reduce flows in the lower Russian River this year to closer around 50 CFS. So this is a pretty unusually low flow year that we are going into, and it's the result of almost eliminating the sort of transfer through the Potter Valley project, which, you know, takes water from the Eel Russian River or the Eel watershed and then sort of transfers it over to the Russian River watershed. Because of water supply issues over on the Eel River side, they are dramatically reducing flows this summer. And then also the water agency is anticipated to receive a variance to further restrict flows. And so that kind of stacking of 2 different variances is going to lead to an extremely low flow scenario. So at this meeting, we had water agency, we had Dr. Mace, our public health officer, we had presence from both the 4th district, my colleague James Gore, as well as myself. We had Regional Parks Director Bert Whitaker, who you'll also hear from shortly, Russian River Parks and Rec, Sweetwater Springs, as well as Russian River Fire Protection District. We had Chief Hine in attendance there. And we also did have a representative from the Vacation Beach Fire Safe Council. And what came out of that meeting is that a recognition that it is not just about recreation, even though these dams are technically for impounding water for recreation, it also actually provides firefighting benefits, right? We don't have very many places that a helicopter can go scoop water in the lower Russian River because we have a lot of trees and we don't have a lot of open, big open ponds. And so it became very apparent that this is actually a critical function of the lower Russian River itself, and the dams really support that. We also did note that while Sweetwater Springs was likely to be okay without the dams going in, it is highly likely that those dams also actually provide some additional benefits to wells that provide a lot of you all with drinking water. And so that was also a concern that we could potentially see increased pumping costs as a result of not installing the dams. And of course, right now, with everyone in a very financially precarious situation, that's another concern as well. So the follow-up is that I will be meeting again with Dr. Mace next week to finalize any decisions. But we are not actually going to be looking at the dams in total. So we've got the 2 dams in the lower Russian River. There's also the dam up at Memorial Beach in Healdsburg that is operated by Regional Parks. And it turns out that the issues are actually very different. So we actually might potentially see different policies being enacted around the different dams. And up in North County, they actually don't have an issue with water resources for fire protection because there are other gravel ponds and other sources of water that they can utilize. And it also does not actually have a positive impact on any of the city of Healdsburg's wells. So we're definitely weighing different factors down in the lower Russian River. And if you have any concerns that we are missing, I would love to hear your feedback in order to convey that to Dr. Mace. And I don't know if Chairwoman, if you want me to take questions now, or if I should hand it over to Mr. Hernandez to provide the Sweetwater or the Russian River Parks and Rec perspective on the dams.
If people could ask you questions and exclude the dam, and we'll talk about the dam more when Herman fills us in. So does the board have any questions for Supervisor Pip?
How's the county handling looking at businesses that don't fit into a traditional bucket? So if it's not like my organization, we do veterinary services, we do rescue, we do a whole bunch of different things. And they could fill into a whole bunch of different categories. If it doesn't fit into a regular category, how is the county handling that? Is there a group of people that folks can reach out to and say, hey, I got a different kind of business. How do I handle this?
Absolutely. So if you're always welcome to reach out directly to our office. And if it's a top priority item where you really need to know in the next 24 or 48 hours, we can actually send it straight over to the DOC legal team, which is a departmental operations council who can review this in real time. For a while, there was also actually a business hotline. I'm not sure if that's still active, so I don't want to give you a phone number to nowhere. So at this point, I would just encourage you to reach out to us directly, and then we can immediately file that request with County Counsel who's working in the Department of Health Services.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say, that's one of the blessings, honestly, in West County. We have all of these amazing, unique businesses. I call them the unicorn businesses. They don't fit into any clearly defined
Right.
box. And so we're constantly asking about those businesses.
Mike, you have a question?
Thank you, Jeanette. Supervisor Hopkins, the EDB is now working on about 8 additional categories for BMPs. We should have that information posted hopefully by tomorrow afternoon. And all we need, for example, PIP, if you have a specialized need, we can provide, our teams at EDB can provide information for you as far as BMPs for your specific needs.
Great, thank you.
Any other board questions? Excuse me, Jordan, I see you.
So was there any discussion about the impact to the natural habitat and possible toxic algae blooms?
There was a little bit of conversation about that with respect to water quality. We are honestly anticipating challenging water quality this year, regardless of whether the dams are installed, due to just the extremely low flows. And so, you get high temperatures and not much water. And unfortunately, we are likely to see cyanobacteria overgrowth as we have experienced in past summers. The modeling data on that has been extremely tricky and tough to pin down. This as we went through the low flow EIR proposal process where, they have a really hard time determining exactly what factors result in that overgrowth. But yeah, there's no good answer. There's no good prediction based on, whether the dam is in or whether the dam isn't in, but we do recognize that the low flows overall may lead to challenging water quality conditions.
Vesta? Go ahead, Vesta.
Vesta, hold on one sec. Let's make sure that we're not both trying to unmute you at once.
Touch it.
It still shows you as muted. Let's try one more time. Vesta, will you try unmuting yourself?
Yep, there you go.
There you go.
Okay. One of the things at the fire meeting, they talked about the dams creating bridges for fire vehicles to cross. Now, I know things like some of the summer dams do create roads and therefore create access for fire trucks, and some of them do not create roads. Is there any part in putting up the dam that is part of the consideration that they might put up the dam because it can create a road for better access for fire vehicles?
That is an excellent question. And regardless of the decision as to whether to install the dams, the road will go in. And we confirmed that with Johannes with Transportation and Public Works that they are able to do that regardless of whether the dam is installed. And I really am grateful you mentioned CAL FIRE actually supported our proposal to install the dams a little bit earlier. I mean, the roads, not the dams, the bridges. And so that was extremely helpful in, trying to expedite that permitting process. And I also want to mention actually, and this would be a great thing to get the MAC behind, we are hoping at some point for some kind of a federal stimulus package that would specifically focus on infrastructure. There's obviously a huge need across the country, and in West County, we are no exception. And so I really would like to prioritize permanent bridge installation if there is any federal funding that becomes available. And so if, at some point, I would love to ask, the chairwoman to maybe have at some point on a future agenda meeting to maybe consider what other types of major infrastructure projects would be prioritized for the Lower Russian River.
Okay. Any other board questions? On to the public. Any public comments?
Thanks, Jeanette. So I am seeing 3 hands raised, and we also did identify one question on Facebook. So if it's appropriate, I suggest that I'll just recognize the individuals from the public one at a time, and then we'll do that other question last.
Okay.
Okay, so the first person I'm gonna turn on is David Rosen. He's been waiting longest. David, you're unmuted. Go ahead. Or you should be unmuted.
Does it unmute now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just a quick question. When we see folks in town, let's say in Guerneville or at the stores, et cetera, who, are from out of town clearly, what's an effective way I guess the only way to say is to report these folks or to report the activity. What would be effective and a good use of resources that might make a difference? The question makes sense?
Yes, so this is actually probably a good question for Sergeant Valencia, who will be presenting shortly. I will say that I have had conversations with the DA and the sheriff, and that it is actually considered unconstitutional, for instance, to go around trying to check people's IDs to see whether they're locals or not. So I think that we need to focus on what are they doing that is inappropriate, that would be enforceable. For instance, not wearing a facial covering when they're supposed to be wearing a facial covering, or something to that effect. And I hope that we can focus on education and outreach. I think that having some consistent signage, around the lower Russian River, regarding what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable, trying to get consistency between regional parks and Monterey, Rec and Park and Russian River Parks and Rec would be really great as well. So I know that it's challenging and I know it's frustrating. If you do see a vacation rental that is operating illegally and is having people, different people come in every single night, that can be reported to the non-emergency sheriff's phone number, which is 565-2121.
Am I still live?
Yep.
Oh, so you bring up a really good point, which is I don't think, everyone's so cranky these days, and I know I personally am not interested in fueling the crankiness. And as you were talking, I just wonder, what if there was a simple flyer that was in some of the public places? A bunch at the Safeway, a bunch at the here and there, where you could just take it and just hand it to somebody and say, look, what you're doing is not only against the law, but it's putting us all at risk, and no one wants to be a jerk to you, but you shouldn't be here. I don't know, just a thought. It's a tricky one, and yeah, no one wants to call the sheriff and say, hey, look at their ID. So I don't think anybody wants to go there. There's probably no clean answer. I just wanted to put it out there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
So the next speaker is the next attendee who'd like to speak is Alexis Averbuck. Alexis, you should be unmuted at this time.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Hopkins, for everything you do for us. I really appreciate every little bit of effort you put out on our behalf. The question I have is, my husband and I have both lost our jobs due to COVID, and so we are contemplating trying to find a way to, say, vacation rental our house later in the summer, if possible, to create an income stream. And since we're trying to be unvarnished here, I'd love to hear your opinion on even if that's even realistic. Because if the answer is no, it helps us to guide our thinking to realistically find another way to generate some cash.
So that is an excellent question. And I really wish that I had a crystal ball to say whether or not we'll be able to have any tourism serving businesses operate this summer, because I know a lot of small businesses are really hinging on that determination. Unfortunately, I don't have that crystal ball at this point in time. And we don't know, it's not just actually a local crystal ball, it's a state crystal ball that's required, because ultimately the governor is the one who can, sort of pull the trigger and allow the tourism to start reoperating throughout the entire state. So I don't have a good answer for you, but what I would say is that, some things that you could do would be more of a month-to-month rental or rentals for essential workers. There are some opportunities that are not, renting out to tourists that might still provide a critical service and might allow you to earn some extra revenue. So I can definitely provide you with more information offline if you'd like, surrounding what is a legal use of, vacation rental or short-term rental during the pandemic, which is not for tourism, but for other purposes that are considered essential.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So the next speaker is Mike Bolger. Mike, you should be able to speak.
Yeah, I have to echo the comments about Supervisor Hopkins' role in the last few months, just doing an excellent job. I am pretty concerned about this blue-green algae. In 2015, we had the low flow that went down to 51 cubic feet per second. And we got a huge bloom of blue-green algae, which actually resulted in the death of several dogs, caused sickness in some of the younger children. And I think that, the question would be, is the Sonoma County Water Agency willing to use adaptive measures to possibly raise the flow in the case that we're getting a warning sign that there's going to be a bloom of this blue-green algae? We do have some models that are available that link the water temperature and the air temperature and the flow that have been very successful in the last 6 years, 4 years, 5 years to do these predictions pretty well. And I think it is possible to tell ahead of time whether this is going to happen.
I think that is a great question, and one that I can definitely bring up with the water agency. I do know that was kind of my big focus, and it was really from hearing from wonderful members of the community like you and Brenda Edelman of trying to push adaptive management on the water agency. And so the original low flow proposal that was being floated, for sort of a permanent shift did not have any kind of adaptive management. And, I just didn't think that made any sense to box us into a place where we knew that we would likely have these kinds of toxic algal blooms. And so while that's definitely now part of the longer term management strategy, I'm not sure whether the, emergency variations that are being approved right now would allow for that. But I can definitely follow up and see if, for instance, we're expecting a temperature spike, if there could potentially be a little bit more flow. I think that's a great question. And yeah, I will definitely get back to you on that one.
Linda, there are two other attendees waiting to speak, but there is one related Facebook question that's tied to that, what you just answered. So to stay on topic, John Condon was asking, is there any feedback from the water agency with their modeling of low flow river conditions without the seasonal summer dams installed? So I just wanted to, since that was the topic you were just speaking to.
So the modeling was really just sort of a quick static look at how wide the river would be and how deep the river would be with or without the dams. And that was based on 100 CFS flow. And we can definitely make that public and sort of share that on the Facebook page, and also make sure that every single one of our MAC representatives has access to that. It didn't include, temperature, water quality, any of the other sort of more nuanced details that are so critical when you're looking at the potential for the overgrowth of cyanobacteria.
Great. Thanks, Linda. The next public commenter is John Uniacke. John, you should be able to speak now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, Linda. Thanks. I appreciate what you do. The county stated this week that both summer bridge roads are open, so they had completed those projects. Being over 80 and knowing a bunch of old folks here, I see a lot of weight going to making money and less weight going to protect us old folks who live here full time. There's no enforcement of any of these rules. There's no tracking. There's no anything. When you open it up to hordes of people coming in here, these people are going to get infected. And how are you going to control this issue with no enforcement?
I thank you for asking that question, John. And again, I think that's a great question to sort of discuss with Sergeant Valencia when it's his opportunity to speak. But I want to acknowledge that this, we're really struggling with this along the coast right now in particular, because the coast right now is still in a closure to vehicular traffic for, all of the beach and parks access. But the multi-million-dollar question is, how can you sort of turn on the spigot slightly, but not sort of all the way? And that's the challenge that we're facing, is that we want to, resume the level of socioeconomic activity that is safe, that can allow people to get back to work, that can allow them to have an income, but that does not endanger society. And that's an extremely difficult thing to do when we do know that we have limited enforcement. I'm one of the first to admit that the sheriff's office has less staffing than it did, at its peak. They basically never recovered from the last recession. And so our deputies do amazing work covering a huge, just giant sort of stretch of West County, but it's impossible to be everywhere all the time. And a lot of the places that tend to have, high levels of tourism like we do are much more urbanized. So you look at, for instance, San Diego County, right? When they were trying to deal with moderating their beaches and, how many people were coming to their beaches, they have an entire fleet of lifeguards and and police that can just really get out there and have, a much higher density of enforcement activity. And so this is going to be an ongoing challenge. And I think that we need to certainly support our law enforcement personnel. And I look forward to hearing what Sergeant Valencia has to say, but also work on the education and outreach component. We all can, I think, without being grumpy, as someone said earlier, do our best to educate the community and try to hold ourselves and other people accountable in a polite and positive way. And so I think that's what we're going to have to do going forward. But I want you to stay safe, John. No one wants to, to get people sick in the Lower Russian River. And I think it's going to be incumbent upon all of us to make sure that we're following the policies and that we're setting good policy to begin with.
There's many requirements, 5 or 6 requirements for you to go forward. One is no deaths for 2 weeks. Another is tracking. Another is being able to follow the lead when somebody has it. Where did it come from? And a lot of these you're not prepared to do yet. So I am very concerned. I'm old, I can die, but I don't want to die because somebody wants to make money. That's all.
And I do not in any way, shape, or form think that you're old and can die. I honestly, truly, I want to say that just up front. Like, this is not about sacrificing lives for the economy. And I really, truly believe that every single life in our community has value, and that we need to protect those who are most vulnerable, both medically as well as financially, because we also have community members who have lost all of their income and need help accessing food. And so we need to take care of everybody. One thing that I want to mention, I've been asking for this for weeks and I keep being told that it's going to go up tomorrow, but soon we should actually have a dashboard that is publicly available that showcases where we are in meeting those criteria, so that there's complete transparency. I want you to be able to sort of track our progress so that you know that we are or aren't meeting the governor's metrics. We are actually doing a really good job when it comes to sourcing PPE, when it comes to the sort of contact tracing capacity. We're among the top in the state at that. And also when it comes to our testing capacity, which now is actually at that point where it does meet the governor's criteria. However, right now we have too many positives per 10,000 cases. That is one of the criteria that we are not meeting. And as you mentioned, we did have 2 fatalities over the past 14 days, which also puts us out of sync with that metric that the governor has established. But hopefully we'll have a little more transparency around exactly what's going on inside county government so that you can track our progress and know how close we are to meeting those metrics.
Thank you for your time.
Linda, on Facebook, David Wabel asked 2 questions that you basically answered. I'm just going to read them so you can see if there's anything else you'd like to add right now. How close are we on the governor's 6 criteria? Which one of the 6 criteria have we met?
So I did mention that the 2 main criteria that we are not meeting is the sort of case rate per 10,000. So you're supposed to have a maximum of 1 positive case per 10,000 residents over a 14-day time window. That would put us at, we should only have about 50 cases over a 14-day time window, and we are about double that right now. The other one is with respect to fatalities. There is a 0 tolerance for fatality as established by the governor over a 2-week time window, and so we are not meeting that metric either. We are, however, meeting the other metrics at this point in time.
Thanks, Linda. So I think we're at the 15 minutes that we were hoping for the questions, but let's just squeeze in this last one who's been waiting. Kirch, I'm gonna allow you to talk right now. Go ahead and ask your question. That clears the question list.
Linda, can you hear me?
Yes.
Monorail Parks and Rec, the boat launch, you have any idea when that might be opened?
Herman,
I do not, but Herman will be on in just a moment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think we're ready then to move on.
Jeanette, sorry, I don't know how you want to handle it, but Ron did flag for me that he had a question. I don't know if you want to go back to allowing the MAC members to speak who haven't yet. Is that fine?
Is it related to anything besides the dams?
Yes, it's different.
Okay, is it related to what Linda's talking about?
Small businesses reopening.
Okay,
I'm going to say the T word, tax. I don't know if it's considered possibly increasing sales tax or anything temporarily to help the small businesses. I've just been in touch with several small business owners that are just dying on the vine. And I would love to pay an increased sales tax temporarily in Sonoma County. And I think that's a way too that visitors who are starting to come back in would support us locally too. Don't know if that's been thought of or. Thanks.
We have not had that conversation yet, but I think that, you know, if there's anything that we can do to get additional resources for our small businesses, we definitely need to turn on you know, over every rock and stone. So definitely interesting idea, definitely something that we can consider. I will say that there are some small businesses who are asking for a tax holiday though. So it's, you know, it's one of those challenging things that that cuts both ways.
Thank you.
okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on now. And Herman, who is here representing the local Park and Rec group, is going to talk about the dam issue and any other local Park and Rec issues. Go ahead, Herman.
Well, thank you so much, Chairman Dillman and the board members for having me this evening. I never expected that I would be presenting anything to MAC Council via Zoom. So enjoying the experience and enjoying the meeting. Anyway, I've had the privilege to serve on the Russian River Recreation and Park District for 45 years and have experienced just about everything that you could being on the board. So let me just share with you a little bit of the history of the Park District. The Park District was created specifically back in 1941 to create tourism. And the installation of the dam was basically during that period of time earth filled. So you got tractors, bulldozers, and you just brought in a lot of gravel, something that we would never, ever, ever see here. So that was back in 41. The Vacation Beach Dam has been through two reconstructions, one back in the 80s and one in the 90s. They're both two different style dams. They're installed and maintained and removed within 5 or less district employees, except the fish ladders that are contracted out. One of the things that I want to add is over that period of time, the impoundment of water behind both dams have fluctuated. And that is because of the gravel movement in past large floods over the history, and where the deep holes and the deep parts of the river have existed have filled in with that gravel. Our permits our permit process has increased as well over those years. We receive permits from the Department of Fish and Wildlife, the County of Sonoma, the Army Corps of Engineers, the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, and we currently have a lease agreement with the state of California relevant to impounding water. The cost for the dams are approximately about $65,000 to $85,000 to install. It doesn't include usually with high water during the winter. It can create a lot more debris and it can create a lot more work, which also relates to increased fees. The dam installation prep begins approximately May 15th. In this situation right now, we've already begun the pre-work. And then water can be held back starting on June 15th, as per our permits. Removal begins around the 2nd or 3rd week of September, and most not be holding back water as of October 1st. It has been a very, at times, challenging course for me, being one of the older board members on our board. And we've dealt with just about everything for the exception of what we're going through at this current time. So basically, that's what I was given to present. I have a habit of talking too much, but I'll stop right there. And for any questions.
Okay, board questions? Council questions? Jordan?
All right.
Go ahead.
Hey, Herman, thanks for joining us today and tonight. So I was under the impression that the dams are going in on the 15th. Is that correct?
No, the comment that I made was that we begin on the 15th doing preliminary work at the county yard. So that work is being done, preparing the boards, cleaning up anything that needs to be transported. But we are in a hold position as of this time until we get any decision that will be coming down the line next week, as Supervisor Hopkins had explained.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Other board questions? Cynthia?
Don't have a question, but I could give a little update on Monte Rio Beach if that would be helpful.
Go ahead.
Okay, just as usual, the Monte Rio Beach usually opens May 30th or June the 1st. So at this point in time, what's happening with us is on the 25th, the person will be there to grade the beach and get it ready in case things are opened. But after that, essentially everyone is simply waiting to see what the guidance will be. Now, if the beach is opened at some point later on this summer, there will be the concession stand because that's essentially takeout. But a big concern that our Rec and Park is grappling with is the rental of boats. Because how are they going to disinfect the boats between each use? What are they going to use that is an effective disinfectant but doesn't hurt fish or any other environmental concerns, that kind of thing. So, and unfortunately, I can't speak about the boat launch knowledgeably. I wish I could, because I'd love to go kayaking, but I don't know what's happening there. I guess just waiting for further guidance from the county.
Okay, any further board comments, questions? Yep. No, can't hear you, Pip.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hi, hey Herman, I just want to give a big shout out to the folks that are running the Sunrise Community Garden. They have been doing a fantastic job with social distancing, scheduling people to go in. It's working orderly. People are being able to plant and grow food. And it was a great decision to open it up, and the people are acting super responsibly. It's really great to see.
Thank you. It's good to hear. And it was something that we cleared through the county which they found community gardens at that time. I think it was the middle to the, almost to the end of April as an essential. And so, and you bring up another good point. We've opened our tennis courts. Our tennis courts are open. We do manage approximately 5 different playgrounds and parks in the Russian River Recreation District. And so the tennis courts are open. We still have our dog park closed and the kids' playground.
Yep.
So thank you for that.
Sure.
Okay, other board comments? Okay, we'll move on to the public comments. Oh, excuse me, Vesta, quickly.
How do we find out which facilities are open versus which ones are still closed? So you mentioned that some of the tennis courts are open, but so how do we find out which ones are open so that people know which ones to go to?
Well, currently, we have 3 parks with tennis courts. They're open. They're open for tennis and they're open for, what is it, pickleball? And the only thing that would be shut down right now in the district would be just the children's playground and the dog park in Monterey, in Rio Neto. Those are the
So
only ones now.
That's listed on the Russian River Parks website? That they're open?
I'd have to double check, but we've been right on it with the staff, and I can, we'll make sure to include it in our website.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll go on to public comment, Leo.
Sure, we have 2 people right now. John Uniac, again, I'm gonna turn you on so that you are able to speak.
Yes, yes, I just wanted to say, Herman, as an ex-board member, I'm so thankful that you're still on that board and you're taking this project through. Because if you weren't there, who would know what would be happening? So keep up the good work.
Thank you, John.
Great, thank you. Next, we have Noel. Okay. Noel, you should be ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for putting this meeting on Zoom. It's very informative. I just had an idea and I just want to throw it out there. Given if we are not able to put up the dams this year, whether it would be possible to release the funds that are used for that to help the lower river businesses who are suffering right now. And that's my question.
Well, that's a good question. Is that to me or to Supervisor Hopkins?
I would imagine to either one of you.
Well, I'll answer it. Basically, our funding comes through the county through our property taxes, and they're identified. To be able to move any of our funds from our dams, that would be something that I'd have to look into because we've never done that before. To be able to give some type of assistance to some of the businesses, I think that's a good idea. But we'd have to contact county council and check to see if that's even feasible. But I can tell you that if you want to email me, you can email me at hermanjh@aol.com and with your contact information and just reiterating the question, and we'll get back to you on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that's it for public attendees. I understand that Ron signaled that he'd like to have a question as well. It's your decision about whether you want to go back to the bank members.
All right, I'm sorry. I think we'll move on. Perhaps we can pick it up a little later, Ron. Okay, we're on to the next topic. And let's see here.
So we've got Bert going here. He is
Yeah.
connected and ready to go.
Okay.
And it looks like it's recreational parks update with Director of Regional Parks, Bert Whitaker.
Yes, and Bert, I really haven't met him until we started doing these meetings, and I feel like he's my best friend at this point. But nevertheless, he apparently has started out with the Regional Park and Rec as a lifeguard and proceeded on to manager and various degrees of one sort or another. And now he's the director of the Regional Park. And take it away, Bert.
Hey, thank you for the kind words, the introduction, Chair Dillman. Bert Whitaker, Regional Parks Director, and 25 years ago, started off at Memorial Beach with red shorts, swimming in the Russian River, and it is a place that is certainly near and dear to my heart. Also, do a quick thank you to Herman Hernandez, who also serves as a volunteer, and he's the chair of our Parks Recreation Advisory Commission for the Regional Park System, and has been a huge asset over the years, guiding regional parks in how we develop and operate. So I want to give everyone an update on the changes that went into effect beginning yesterday with the regional park system, and then I will speak specifically to the Russian River and some other things. It's been very, very helpful and insightful to listen to the conversation in the last hour or so, and glad to be here and answer any questions you may have. So the amended Parks Health Order yesterday allowed inland regional parks to go from a soft closure mode where the parking lots were closed and the public could only walk or bike in, where now the public can use the parking lots at the majority of our facilities, especially our larger inland open space parks. The Tole Lakes of the world and Hood Mountain and Spring Lake are now available and open for the public, and that has all been going very well. During the couple of week period where the public could use the parks, my staff was out there really trying to understand, are we going to have an issue with social distancing and the public understanding how to navigate these public spaces, keep for their own safety, but also those around them feeling safe, because it's a really important thing when you're out there at the parks to have that feeling of safety. These are important places, and we want to, it's a core value of ours. The coastal facilities remain in a soft closure mode. So similar to what's been just talked about with businesses and other things coming on, it's a phased approach where right now in the coast, visitors are not permitted to drive or use a vehicle to access our beaches or trails along the coast. The local residents on the coastal areas are getting a bit of a reprieve, or at least those who live within a reasonable distance of them are able to get out there and walk on the beach or walk on trails before 11 a.m. and after 5 p.m. daily. And that's really been adopted as a sort of a trial thing. A lot of conversations and a lot of different things happening up and down all of our California coastal counties. And we do not see any perfect solution, but we're optimistic that as time goes on, there will be more phases that will allow those of us, especially living here in Sonoma County, to be reconnected with our coast. And that is definitely a big component of my email inbox these days, is those who don't have access to the coast. And believe me, it is a hard thing to try and limit people from being able to go to these places that they've spent their whole life going to, and they love them dearly as we do. Talk about the Russian River, and certainly the Russian River is similar to our coastline. It is an area of the county that is incredibly spectacular. It is a regional and state, and in many instances, international destination for visitors. And it's an area where we're expecting this summer is going to be a challenge. As you saw during the soft closure period that lasted about 2 weeks, we had park staff out there keeping an eye on things. And now that we are back with a partial reopening, the facilities that we have open on the Russian River is Healdsburg Veterans Memorial Beach, Steelhead Beach, and Sunset Beach. Our smaller, sort of more footprinty, sort of neighborhood footprint type river access points, for example, Del Rio Woods up on Fitch Mountain, Forestville River Access, which is across from Mother's Beach, and Guerneville River Park all have very small parking lots. They're still in a soft closure mode, where we certainly encourage the neighbors living nearby to get in there and help keep eyes and ears on the places. But we're not planning to reopen them for several weeks, probably until after Memorial Day weekend, and reevaluate. As we head into this summer, I think the one glimmer of good news is I don't expect to have some of the same challenges with charter buses, perhaps, that we had the last couple of summers. However, I do think that it's, when the temperatures rise up there, I've lived in the river community during the summer as well. We know folks are going to come, and what regional parks really would like to make sure that everyone understands is it's going to be an approach of adaptive management this summer. I don't want to pretend to say that we have the answer to today of what it's going to look like on June 15th or July 15th. But stay tuned. We're going to do our best to communicate sort of what's going on. And if we see facilities that are literally getting overrun, my staff has been directed to come up with adaptive strategies and to do our best to communicate those out. But I won't do anything other than say it might be a little bit clumsy at times. We are still working on the Park Management Pandemic Playbook. It is a document being crafted by the day and sometimes by the hour. And we are here to listen and try and work with everybody to keep everyone safe, because public safety is number one. This is a very serious health emergency, and we have got vulnerable communities throughout the entirety of the county. And we are such a regional destination, and the river fits into that. So with that, I said, to see real-time updates on facilities, we put together via the www.sonomacountyparks.org, our website on the county porthole. You will see a COVID-19 box there that gives you, if you look into there, it'll give you a link where you can go park by park, and there's a grid matrix that shows each facility and what the status is. As summer goes on, we're also looking at ways on our Facebook or other methods to get something up where if Steelhead Beach is closed and full by 10 a.m., the public can know that. But we're not quite there yet, but that's an area we're striving to get to with real-time information for folks. So with that, that's kind of the high points of what I wanted to share. I think, excuse me, one more thing I did want to just speak on, because I heard it coming up in earlier discussions around enforcement. As is pointed out there, I'm sure we'll hear similar from Sergeant Valencia. There's, we need the public's cooperation, and certainly no one's intention is to do anything other than educate and hope that folks will comply, because there's not, we're not going to go chase around, and rangers don't really have the capacity or the resources to try and change behaviors of folks other than those things that are most egregious. I mean, we're really going to be having our efforts focused on larger groups coming down that are just vagrantly disregarding the health order. We already in the park see some minor instances of youth especially coming and getting together. And, as is often talked about in our circles, those youth are, if they're in a relatively small group and they're out in the parks, there's nothing to say that if we shoo them out of the parks, that they're probably just going to be in somebody's backyard or on private property doing the same thing. So we're really trying to educate everyone that we can around the realities of the disease and keeping themselves safe and helping others feel safe, and coming at it from that perspective. And when we do see obnoxious things, if we suddenly find ping pong tables and beer kegs showing up at Steelhead Beach, we'll get real serious about that real quickly. But some of these minor things, it's so important right now as we go into this second month, third month, fourth month of this emergency. There is so much stress build up, so much need for mental health, and we're already seeing in a couple of days of the parks being open, just getting back to that little bit of normalcy. It's going to be really important for all of us, keeping ourselves together and supporting our families and our friends as we navigate this, because this is unknown, and this is going to be a sustained and prolonged challenge for our communities, and that's throughout the entirety of the county and the state and the country, and in fact the world. So thank you, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Bert. Board comments first? Desta, I can't see you for something is in your way.
Really? Like this, maybe?
Okay, go for it.
Okay. Hold on a second, Gianna. The low flow. I'm thinking that in essence, the low flow is going to be our friend for the summer, because so many people will simply not be able to take a canoe or a kayak down the river because the flow will be too low. And then there's the concept of if the toxins rise a little higher, that also will discourage people from using the river. Maybe that's one of those blessings in disguise in terms of trying to keep the crowds down. you do good job of letting people know if things are like low flow. I mean, it'd be one of those things I would suspect that to have it on your website that the CFS is an important part of it, and say the CFS is too low for boating, the CFS is too low for floaters, that kind of thing. You'll be walking more than you will be floating. Just to have that CFS level be part of the information that you give, as well as which parks are open, et cetera. That would probably be a good idea.
Vesta, thank you. I have not heard that suggestion yet, and it's a rock solid principle. And as we saw, I think it was 2015, I think, when we had the major blue-green algae, and the beaches were quite empty.
Yes.
After that occurred.
Yeah, so that's just a thought. And then, of course, when we have the issues of dogs, dogs and small children drink the water. And so that's one of those things too. So I think the warnings have always been something that we're afraid of because it discourages business. But right now we're discouraging people doing stupid things for all of our help. So if you could add that to your website, that might just be one of those pieces of useful information. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board comments? Public comments.
Sure. So the first public comment that came in was a written comment through the Q&A. So it's Michelle Luna, the ED of Stewards of the Coast and Redwoods, the co-manager of these two parks. So I'm going to read her comment on her behalf. Just want to announce that Armstrong Redwoods SNR and Austin Creek SRA are also now in soft opening with parking lots and restroom open as of tomorrow, May 15th. Visitors must have their masks and wear them when they are near other visitors and our staff, and maintain 6 feet physical distancing. So that's from Michelle Luna. There is one question that came in via Facebook related to parks. It's from Bobby McClain. How can we make dog parks safe? Limit how many dogs at the same time, require social distancing of humans. Bert, is there anything you can speak to regarding dog parks, or Herman? I don't know if you want to add anything on that either.
I'm happy to make a few remarks on the logic being applied right now with the dog parks being closed. Essentially, the health officer and certainly many of the park partners are in an ongoing conversation. And dog parks come in all shapes and sizes in Sonoma County. And are typically congregation areas for community members to get together, and also have a number of high-touch surfaces with shared dog toys or gates that have multiple fasteners and ways to sort of control the animals entering and exiting. Definitely been paying close attention, whereas there's a good network of even the county parks directors across the 9 Bay Area counties, and just talking about what we're seeing is all sorts of interesting things have been happening and related to parks the last several months as operators have tried to keep things open and had to shut them down and everything in between. But many instances of dog owners essentially not being able to maintain the appropriate distance from others as their animals are using the dog park. And I certainly recognize that dog parks could each have some type of occupancy to them or some type of framework. But certainly in my conversations with Dr. Mace and with Barbie Robinson, our Department of Health Services director, that was not a decision with this first phase of really getting the public back out and trying to maximize the number of low touch, low risk activities the public could engage in outdoors with individuals or households. Dog parks really didn't fit that criteria that they were looking at. We're also closely watching some recent criteria put up on the Centers for Disease Control website around dogs. Apparently there are some instances of dogs contracting or being able to have COVID, and they don't really understand what that means, as well as the potential for COVID to be on a pet and other people petting that pet and those types of potential transmission sources. So as with so many things, we're learning by the day, by the hour, by the minute, and that was sort of where that decision landed with the health officer in this go around of easing of park restrictions.
Thank you.
I just want to add that much that we've done with our park district, it has been spoken somewhat with Bert from Regional Parks, and he's been very supportive to us. So I'm kind of following their course to relevant kind of filter into our park district and our dog park when the time comes.
Thank you.
you. So let's go to the two attendees with their hands raised. It's John Uniac first. John, you should be able to unmute. You are ready.
Yes, thank you. You brought up Steelhead Beach, but there's also Sunset Beach, the two lower beaches under your control here present time. And you said it's full at 10 o'clock. Many people in this county buy park passes, so the local people can use the parks, but they can't use their passes because others coming from who knows where fill up the parks before a reasonable time. Is there a plan that maybe we can say that these parks are only open to pass holders until noon and let the local people that have park passes get there? It might increase the park pass business. And after 12 o'clock, if there's room, other people can come.
Thank you, John. That's a great question and suggestion. And it has been talked about. I would say we have not seriously explored some of those ideas around how could you go about doing some sort of residents only feature. We're happy that the park membership program is back in place, which I think does somewhat help with folks being more informed and knowing they have access out there. But to really at the end of the day, the determination right now is regional parks really doesn't have the resources nor the technology or there's the various things in place to seriously consider an opportunity like that. And the little bit of conversations with the legal staff here at the county, I think as Supervisor Hopkins mentioned a little bit, there's some constitutional problems with some of these things. And in fact, many of these facilities were paid for with state and or federal dollars. And those grants often come with obligations that persist on for decades, if not perpetually, with the property, where we would run into some legal problems, and it's sort of on a property by property basis, and it becomes quite complicated before you know it to even do real research on that. And as we know, the county lawyers are quite serious about their business, and don't go long before things can get quite complex. So I hope that answers your question.
One follow-up. What's the benefit of buying a parks pass?
Wonderful question. I've always seen the benefit as twofold. Number one, we rely on that revenue. 100% of it is put back in the park system to take care of restrooms, to remove trash, to keep people out there monitoring the parks, which is more important than ever. Secondly, we find a good number of our members, it is a $7 day use parking fee, and it's just a matter of economy. And it's a good way to do two things: to support the parks and to lessen the hassle of going out there and paying a $7 increment when you go out there, or risking getting a warning or a ticket from a park ranger.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
We had one other hand raised, but the hand just went down. If that was a mistake, please raise your hand again. Otherwise, Jeanette, it looks like Pip wants to speak if you want to make time for MAC members again.
Well, it's either bring it back to the total board or to move on.
This is related to animals with COVID and transmission and what the county we're doing in the county about that.
Okay.
So just so you know, both the AVMA and the CDC have said the risk of transmission from animals to humans is very, very low. So that risk is not high. And at Forgotten Felines and Sonoma Humane Society and other organizations in the county, we are even going even extra steps on that part to make sure that no animal has been exposed, and if we think they have been exposed, that they're treated. So just so you know, any animal that you come into contact with, the risk is very low, and organizations in Sonoma County, Napa, and Marin are all taking extra precautions So dogs and cats or other animals are safe to adopt and to foster right now. So where there be no risk of transmission.
Thank you. Jeanette, the hand came back up, so I suggest we do that and then move on to the next speaker. So Kirch, you are again able to speak. We have to unmute you. You've done it. Go ahead.
This is for Herman, if he's still there. Usually I launch my boat at the beginning of the year and take it out at the end of the year on the river. And if the dam doesn't go in, and if Johnson Beach doesn't go in, are we going to be able to launch boats at the boat launch down there? Because it's the only access we have.
Can you unmute Herman, please?
He's got it.
I just did it. The one thing is, as you brought up an interesting comment, I haven't heard directly from Johnson's Beach, but I heard that they were not going to open this year. And if they don't open and we put the dam in, the gates are going to be locked. So that would be something that I would need to have to find out what the process will be and what the position will be with the district. So as of right now, I only know secondhand that Johnson's Beach is not going to be opening this year. And unless something changes, but that was just about 4 days ago. And we will bring that to the board to kind of discuss how we're going to do that.
It would be great, thank you. And just if the dams go in or if they don't go in, if we can get access to just launch our boats and be out of there, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So we move on then. And now we're down to Sergeant Juan Valencia. I believe you are from the Guerneville Deputy Station. I think I've seen you there. Is that correct?
Actually, I've done most of my time at Windsor Police Department. I have worked overtime out in Guerneville.
Oh, okay. So the big issue for the locals is enforcement of all this. So you are on the hot seat.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity of coming in and talking to the West County community on enforcement. It's kind of a tricky and kind of complex situation that we're dealing with COVID-19, the shelter in place. We have had this past weekend, we did have some calls for service up in North Beat, up in Del Rio. And some of the contacts out there were people from out of the area. So our approach is education, education, education. The times that we have had to contact people, usually as soon as we inform them and educate them on the shelter in place, the health order, they mostly all comply. I know another hot topic was vacation rentals. So far we've issued 8 warnings at vacation rentals. We are not seeking vacation rentals. If we get a call for service, we go out and investigate. For example, most of them have been from neighbors calling in, knowing that it's a vacation rental. They'll call in and say, "Hey, somebody just pulled up in a driveway. They're not the owners. It's a vacation rental." A deputy will go out there and contact them, and it's usually people from out of the area. And we have not come across any second homeowners that were at the place. They've been all from out of the area, basically renting the property for a couple of days just to get away. The other question is also, it's come up a lot, is the masks. We are not going out and proactively contacting people, making sure that they live together, that they're practicing social distancing. So what we are doing is, if we do get a call for service, for example, if somebody at a grocery store not wanting to wear a mask, the grocery store does have the right to refuse service. We would go there and educate the person that masks are required, especially indoors, practice social distancing. We've had a numerous amount of calls also for people out walking out in the road or out in the street that are not wearing a mask. If they're practicing social distancing, they're not required to wear a mask if they're outside. So I think there's a lot of confusion still. So we are kind of in the front of education and then making sure also that the deputies out on the street have a clear understanding of what it is. Because they are, let's face it, the orders are kind of confusing to anybody. So it's really important that we understand it and then also are able to educate and translate it to people.
Okay, thank you. So we'll have board comments first. Okay, Vesta.
Mute. Okay, so the concept of 565-2121, is that the number that someone calls every time there's a non-emergency, such as I see someone walking without social distancing, without a mask, they don't look like they belong here, whatever it happens to be the topic, that particular number 565-2121 is the number they should call?
Yes, for non-emergencies, it's 565-2121.
And do they have to reveal who they are and where they are, or can they be anonymous? Because some people have asked me that. I prefer to be anonymous.
Yes, you could demand or request to be anonymous.
Okay, because I think that's especially in neighborhoods where you know one of your neighbors is one of the ones who's being the offender. People do not want to identify themselves as the person who calls the snitch. So
well, yeah, it happens a lot, and let me tell you, they figure it out pretty quick.
Okay, good, but at least it can do anonymous, and that's the number, and that applies to everything, whether you're on the street or whether you're in your neighborhood or whatever it happens to be. Is when you guys go out to warn people about not doing social distancing and wearing masks, do you provide any facial coverings for them? Is there a collection of things that you're allowed to carry with you in your patrol cars to hand people because they may not be able to access one quickly?
Yeah, so we do get some donations and we do carry those with us. What some of the deputies do carry that. Also, if they're outside, they're not required to wear the mask if they're social distancing. So sometimes it's just more the education. And yeah, so to answer the question, if we do have the masks with us, we do give them out.
Okay, I just think that would be one of those things that would be useful and helpful, because there are people who even forget. They leave their house and they forgot, and then they get caught by you and they say, oh, I forgot my mask, I left it at home, but you could hand them one. That would
yeah, and that, I'm glad you brought that up. And I've received actually a couple calls of community members basically that have some sort of health condition that prevents them from wearing a mask. And some of the issues that they've been facing is when they go out in public, they get a lot of smart comments or smirks towards them. So we have to remember also is that if somebody's not wearing a mask, that there could be some sort of health condition also that prevents them from wearing a mask. So basically it's just be respectful to people, no smart comments towards them because there might be some sort of medical condition that prevents them from wearing it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board comments? I have a comment. Given the economical situation, are they going to continue to cut the staff out here in Guerneville of the deputies? I mean, I see this getting worse as far as enforcement because I can see that you're going to cut us.
That's above my pay grade. So maybe the supervisor could comment on that. I basically have no information about that, but let me tell you that at our peak, we're at 260 plus deputies. Now we're at maybe around 220. And we're still given the same amount of work, and at times things are taken away and we're still required to perform the same duties. So it's very difficult to perform at that level.
Would you like to comment, Linda?
I'm happy to. I have consistently fought against cuts to the sheriff's office budget because there's nowhere else to cut without making really substantial reductions in service. I think the good news is that we do have a strong board majority support in favor of preserving, law enforcement in particular, recognizing that that is a critical function. And so while we're going into a very grim budget year, I can assure you that it will be a top priority to maintain staffing at the Guerneville substation and to support the sheriff's budget. Because again, they've just been kind of cut and cut and cut, and they keep, being asked to do more with less. And at some point you can't do more with less, you can only do less with less. And that's really where we're at. So I will certainly be trying to preserve as much funding as possible for our law enforcement partners.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll go to public comment, Leo.
Thank you, Jeanette. For any members of the public who want to speak, go ahead and raise your hand at this time. I'll go ahead and just ask, I'll pass along two relevant questions that have come up on Facebook. One is Wendy Bignell is asking, could we ask for proof of residency, not identification? I think this relates to the issue of constitutionality that Linda brought up earlier. Would you be willing to speak to that?
Yeah, so you can't prevent or not deny access to a person based on where they live, because now you're violating the Constitution, you're violating their rights. So we understand, especially with outsiders, or basically you could say tourists coming into Sonoma County to go and visit the river, to go float down the river, party. So that's going to be a big concern this summer, obviously. So one thing that we do is when we do contact the person for not social distancing at a river at the river, we're going to contact them and just kind of, hey, educate them, like, hey, where are you guys from? If they're not from the area, then it's our opportunity to explain to them what the health order states for our county. So during the conversation, usually we end up kind of finding out where they're from and stuff like that. And that's when we take the opportunity to educate them. But just to come up to somebody and say, where are you from? You can't be here. We can't do that.
Right. So the other question, I'm guessing it's somebody who logged on late, but let's make sure we clarify this. So they're asking, so vacation properties can operate? And as we know, the answer is no, that tourism is not currently permitted in Sonoma County for vacation rentals. But would anybody else, would you like to speak any further to that issue?
So vacation rentals, my understanding is that they're not supposed to be operating. And I believe Linda brought it up earlier about if they fit the category for providing shelter for essential workers, or for example, if it's an out-of-town doctor that's coming here to help out with patients. That it falls under that category. But if I want to go rent a house in Bodega Bay, I can't do that.
Thank you. At this time, I do not see any hands raised. So I think, Jeanette, it's back with you.
Okay. That pretty much closes out the regular session here. So I thank the guests very much for coming and talking to us. I think it's critical that our community be informed of what's happening right now and to talk about our very local issues because we do care. And I do think that we are resilient, and we have been through hell in the last 2 years. So I think we can take on anything and succeed. But thanks a lot for your help. So I'm going to move on. If the guests would like to take off and have a little free time, that's okay with me. So we'll move on to proclamations. There were none. And board reports. The only board reports, we have ad hoc committee reports, and these are really only for discussion. There's no action. It is required that for bylaws and policies and procedures that you have to give a month's notice in order to discuss it. So this is really for the board and the community to look over the changes that we're proposing in the bylaws and policies and procedures. And at June's meeting is the time that we will make decisions. So please come prepared. Do you want to say anything more to that, Mike, since you're...
Thank you, Jeanette. No, that you've nailed it perfectly. Basically, the information is on the board packet and is posted. And we urge that the community members review what we've done so far and then be prepared, as you stated, to at the June meeting to fire away with suggestions, comments, positive or negative, and let us know.
I think you froze up there, Mike. So I'm going to move on. Land use policy. We do have a proposed policy for managing land use issues. And part of the advisory topics that the MAC is charged with discussing and advising the board, use permit applications, rezoning applications, general plan amendments, prioritization of transit and transportation, health and safety issues. So this is my general understanding of what happened was that permit excuse me, you want to go with that, Mike?
I'm sorry, I don't know what you heard or what you didn't hear. We live in Cazadero and we have communication issues on regular occasions out here. And we lost our internet for about 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So what did you hear or what didn't you hear?
Well, basically that everything was okay and that anyone can make a comment and the public included, and to come with your positive or negative issues, that this is a point where you determine how the MAC is governed.
That's exactly correct. And that's the way it works.
This is it. And we will make our decision and then it will go to the Board of Supervisors and they will approve it or not approve it.
That's correct.
So I moved on to land use policy. And as you are the chair of that committee, so I just started talking about the fact that in our purpose, there are these elements that advisory topics, I went over that. And that's pretty much how far I got. So if you want to carry on about what this is all about, I'd appreciate it. So you got to unmute yourself.
I was just doing that. So basically, the ad hoc committee worked on the draft. Have you reviewed the draft at all of what we're attempting to do?
Board members? Okay. I guess not. Maybe it's not.
Okay. So the ad hoc wants to basically present to the board members the process in which this whole land use process will work. The applications will be received by the district director, Leo, and the permit land use ad hoc committee. The applications of significant interest to the community will be sent to the ad hoc for review. Then what happens is that the ad hoc is going to meet on a monthly basis. Generally speaking, the MAC meets on a bi-monthly basis, but the ad hoc will be meeting monthly, and we'll invite the public if a permit is going to be reviewed, and we'll determine based upon timing if permits can be reviewed at the MAC ad hoc meeting or a special meeting. And we invite applicants and public to any land use meeting. So that will be posted and the public will be invited to attend. The applicant for the land use issue will present their project at a public meeting. Public and board comment public and the board will comment on the application. The public comment and applicant response is captured during the meeting, is sent to Permit Sonoma within 3 working days. And then after the event, capture the event follow-up, give Permit Sonoma input based on community experience with events or with that type of event. So the responsibility of the permit land use ad hoc is 1, review and request review for permits of community concern. Schedule meetings, either forthcoming of MAC or as special public ad hoc meetings if timing requires. Publicizing the meeting, capturing the public MAC comment, an applicant response and send to Permit Sonoma. And lastly, gather follow-up input post-event and send to Permit Sonoma. I think that pretty much covers what we have done so far as our draft documentation goes.
Okay, thank you. So this will be up, again, we wanted this on today's agenda as a presentation for everybody to study and get up to speed. And then next at the June meeting, we will again make decisions on this. So any board comments first? Okay. Actually, I said we weren't having a discussion, so I think I really should move on that. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Sorry there. And then vacation rentals. That committee's been perking along here lately. So again, I would just like to have a discussion from Lucy, the chair, and we can again bring this on for June for further discussion and decision making. But I do think Lucy should give us a little report today, quickly. So you want to unmute yourself, Lucy? Okay.
Well, it's wasn't prepared to give any kind of a report, except that there are the challenge remains the same, that short-term rentals across the world, short-term rentals impact local communities by pricing out the locals and by changing the nature, the feel of a neighborhood. So that's across, that's across the world. That's the same issue that we're going to be dealing with here. But there are a number of cities, I haven't seen small communities necessarily, who have the kinds of restrictions such as having only hosted, only allowed, there's just probably a dozen cities in the Bay Area who you are not allowed to do short-term rentals unless the host is on premises, that lives on the property. And that seems to be one way that helps sort out some of the complications of parking and of noise and of changing the nature of a neighborhood. So we made a number of recommendations, created a bunch of, understood a bunch of the challenges and created some recommendations.
Thank you, Lucy. I do want to point out that at this week's Board of Supervisors meetings, there was on the consent calendar a request to exempt a fee to, there's a neighborhood in Armstrong Valley that wants to become an exempt, shut down the Airbnbs basically. And that came up and it was not passed on consent, and there was some conversation about it. So that was really a major issue of why this was brought to the MAC, was that there is a neighborhood in the Lower Russian River that wants to make Airbnbs exempt and not in their neighborhood. And it costs a lot of money, like $15,000. So that was how this all came about. So all I can say right now is please look at this. As you know, Airbnbs are a serious problem out here on the river. So that's about all I have to say about that today. So that really brings it to a close.
Jeanette, you do have one public comment. Nance, did you have something first, or?
I think she's trying to tell me to quit talking about it.
No, actually, I just want to make sure that when you adjourn, you get a motion in a second and an approval.
Thank you for making sure we do that. So before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and let John Uniacke speak.
Sure.
I have copies of the documents, and I wondered, how does one give feedback to these ad hoc committees, especially the bylaws, policies, and procedures ones, where you can get changes from people who have reviewed them before you go to your next meeting that you might want to incorporate into them before you bring it to the next meeting. I don't have an email address or any other access point to access that ad hoc committee.
Good point. Good point. You have anything to say about that, Elise? Yeah, go ahead.
Elise, sorry, I'm muting you right now.
can
Now you
unmute
should be ready to go.
I have the power. Thank you, John. That's a really excellent point. Why don't you send comments to district5@sonoma-county.org, and I will collect them and forward them to the appropriate committee. And we all appreciate your looking over the documents and giving us some feedback in advance of the June meeting. That will be super helpful.
And it's district and then the number 5, district5@sonoma-county.org.
Okay.
I have done that, and I didn't get a response back. So I'd rather have an email address for the ad hoc committee directly.
I'll go search for your email, John. We've had quite a torrent of emails, so I'll go search for your name and pull them out and get them to the ad hoc committee.
This one was to you for tonight's meeting, but anyway, it would be nice to not be able to have to go through a go-between to get to the ad hoc committee.
Which committee are you speaking about?
The ones that has all the bylaws, policies, and procedures. It's going to all happen and then it'll be over. But to waste the time of going into next month and then putting all these additions or changes in, then you can't act. You have to go another month and rewrite it and then come back for approval again. It's just a simplification of getting this done quicker. So that's all.
Okay, well, I can tell you that Mike is the official chair of the bylaws committee.
Right.
And excuse me. I think I have the wrong, yes, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. It's Lucy is the chair of the bylaws committee. Lucy and Jordan and I are on that committee. And I do want to say, I want to apologize for the policies and procedures. Not being a computer whiz, I had to use an online program, and that was the best I could do with that document.
It is a little confusing to try to follow as it's presented, yes.
I will clean that up now that hopefully I'll have a little time to get with it.
Okay.
I am sorry, and I apologize for that.
Okay.
I will also have the bylaws more redlined and cleaned up so that it's easier to read.
Okay.
I will do that, and I will get it out to the public and to the committee myself, unless whatever Lucy has to do. Lucy, do you want to say something?
Well, I do. And is there a procedure against having the public, John in particular, have the chairperson's email address so he doesn't have to go through, or is the process and the procedure to go through the county?
Absolutely not. I don't know all your email addresses by heart, so I gave him the one that I knew. He can send it to Pip, who's his Rio Neato representative, and I believe that you have Pip's email address, and or you can go directly to the ad hoc committee. And Lucy, if you'd like to share your email address, that would be fine as well.
You can just send it to me, Lucy, johnuniac@hotmail.com, rather than put it out on a public broadcast.
At hotmail.com. I will,
Right.
John. Thank you.
Yeah, everybody knows my email anyway.
Okay. I will send it to you. Thank you.
Any other comments, Leo?
Yes, Claudia has her hand up
Oh.
and she's ready to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
I was just gonna recommend, since all of the MAC representatives' emails are on the Lower Russian River MAC County page, it could be helpful in moving forward and now in our bio section to also have, which ad hoc committees that each of us sit on. So we all know too, and so we can see which of the council members are on which committee, and so the public can say, oh, they're on vacation rentals. I want to make a comment about that.
Oh, great idea. I'll go onto the page and update that. Thank you. Great
So-
suggestion.
Jeanette, you have one more public commenter, so I'll go ahead and recognize that final person. It's Suki W, so you're able to talk, and let's make sure you're unmuted. You should be ready to go.
Thank you. And I just want to second, Claudia, what you said about having the contact information available. I've been just so pleased with this entire meeting and the entire exchange that people have had between the members of the board, the members of the public, the guests that you've had. It's just really a breath of fresh air as we shelter in place here. And I think having the contact information so that members of the public can get their comments to the right people in a timely fashion is absolutely essential and will be for a lot of times going forward. So thank you very much.
Okay. So I'm going to ask, were you talking? I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
It's a move.
Pip?
Okay.
Okay, Pip and Claudia seconded. So we'll have to do a roll call vote. Okay, you can unmute yourself.
Trying to unmute Nance. You're still muted. There you go.
There I am. There, I think you and I both, it's like trying to open the
Probably,
car
yeah.
door at the same time.
Yep.
Okay. Jeanette Dillman.
Aye.
And the rest of the people that are on mute, if you're an I, just raise your hand, okay? Claudia Sissenfeld. Vesta. Lucy Hardcastle. Where's Lucy? Cynthia Strecker.
Aye.
Jordan Lebovitz. Okay. Pip Marquez de la Plata.
Aye.
Ron Redmond. Did we lose Ron? Okay. And Mike Nichols.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, we are adjourned. I just have to say that this is the first time I've ever tackled something like this. And I can't tell you how smooth it has gone, and I truly appreciate it.
You did a great job, Madam Chair.
Good job, Jeanette. Jeanette, good job.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody. It's great to see you all. It's good to see your faces.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.